everything's going my way. All the cattle are standing like statues. All the cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads as they see me ride by. But a little brown heifer is winking her eye. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. All the sounds of the earth are like music. All the sounds of the earth are like music. They are like music. The breeze is so busy it don't miss a tree. But a little band, an old roller, an old weeping willer is laughing at me. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day.
This community of care is created through our work and time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values. As we pass these baskets, we thank you for your generous gifts which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. As a reflection of our values, we are pleased to participate in the Change for Change program. The coins you place in the basket today will support the work of nonprofits in and around the Grand Valley. With gratitude, we will now receive today's blessing. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it. And now let's sing together, Stand in Body Your Spirit, hymn number 34. That's in the gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
So, can everybody hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 weeks ago, I stood up here and we talked together as a congregation about authentic self-care and how we were preparing to navigate a world in which it felt like millions of people were feeling powerless, voiceless, and literally feeling like we were being steamrolled by a misogynistic white Christian nationalism. And 2 weeks later, it feels a little bit different, to me at least. A lot can happen in 2 weeks. What I am paying attention to is that I always kind of pay attention to kind of just what's going on in the world and how things feel around me. I'm kind of empathic that way. And what I experienced in the last 2 weeks is it seems that a sense of optimism kind of just sprung up overnight. And so I have been paying attention to that. And the sermon title that came to me a few weeks ago was Passing the Torch. And so I've been reflecting on this. What does it mean to pass a torch? We're literally watching that this week with the Olympics as we watched the torch being passed. And yesterday I was watching track and some swimming, and I watched as teammates from all over the world passed the baton to each other on the track. And passing a baton is a little bit different than passing a torch. The passing of the baton was teammates or colleagues working together as a team, every person doing their own part on an equal field. And the idea of passing the baton, as in a relay, is that no one person can run the entire race by themselves. Because even the fastest person eventually gets fatigued if trying to do it all on their own. And so that is the concept of passing the baton. But what I've also been reflecting on and kind of in awe of the past 2 weeks is the concept of passing the torch. What happens when one person who has been carrying the load hands off the torch, in essence saying, I've done my race. I'm now handing it off so that you can take up the mantle and make this your own, so to speak. And we've seen this I think I've been paying attention in sort of three major ways in the last 2 weeks. Obviously, we saw this happen when the President of the United States stepped out of running for office and said, I am now encouraging and supporting my Vice President to step up and take the torch, so to speak. I've been paying attention to this in the Olympics with Simone Biles, who I referred to a few weeks ago in a beautiful example and role model of self-care. But I'm also looking at what's happening in this country right now as the opportunity for a generational passing of the torch that impacts and involves all of us. I saw one of my favorite posts on Facebook a few weeks ago was this beautiful caption that said, Rosa sat so that Ruby could walk, so that Kamala could run. This is a generational struggle. It's a generational, I don't like the word fight, but I can't think of a better word for it right now, a generational struggle, fight path that has the opportunity to come full circle if we allow it. And I feel like people get that and they understand that. On the evening, or actually the afternoon that Joe Biden handed off his torch to Kamala, there was a spontaneous call of 40,000 Black women on a Zoom call within hours that afternoon. And it turned out there were actually 90,000 that were trying to get in. And so Zoom had capacity to hold 40,000 and the other 50,000 called in of Black women within hours. And then the next day, there was a call of Black men. And then a few days later, I think I heard, and please don't fact check me, but I heard that there were 150,000 just white women and women all over the country. And I have now also heard that there has been calls for white men. So this passing the torch has impacted and inspired so many people. And so I believe that this is where that sense of optimism is coming from. And the place that I am talking about, in all honesty, what I'm talking about today has very, very little to do with politics. Because what I'm talking about is so much deeper than that. I believe that the soul of our nation is being asked to name and claim who we are and what we stand for. And so I believe that it is beyond fitting that where we are right now in this time and place in history it is a story that comes around again and again and again, and it's coming around in full circle. And every time it comes around, we have the opportunity to choose who we want to be in this moment and place in time. And so what I believe happened this week is that when Biden passed his torch, so to speak, he handed it to all of us. And we cannot underestimate the significance of that circle coming back around. And so as a minister, as your minister, I will never tell you what to think. I will never tell you how to think. And I will never tell you what to do. And if I ever start doing that, then remind me it's time for me to pass the torch. But I do hope that occasionally I can throw out some ideas and concepts that might help you think about things in a new or different way. And so when I have been thinking about the recent events of the last few weeks from a more spiritual, kind of cosmic perspective, and this is not necessarily UU theology, but it's theology according to Wendy. The symbolism in this country with our particular history, it feels like a karmic circle coming around. When you have the significance of the symbolism is that you have an older white man passing the torch to an Indian black woman who is going to be standing up and stopping the bulldozer of white evangelical supremacy. If that is not karmic, then I don't know what is. But we still get to and have to choose who we are in relation to what is happening at this point of time in history. And so regardless of what happens this November, I think the tides have already turned and are turned just simply by the act of one person in power intentionally and purposefully stepping back to give another person of a different gender, a different generation, and a different race the spotlight. That is significant. And it is significant for both the conscious and the subconscious health of this nation, regardless of what happens in November. And so my question for us, continuing to look at it from this broader sort of cosmic spiritual perspective as human beings, are we ready to choose differently? To not burn the witches this time, so to speak, but perhaps to embrace the idea that the deeper inner spiritual wisdom and knowledge no longer has to hide who she is. Is it possible that it's time for that? Is it possible that it's time to hand off that torch, that mantle of power, to the people who have been quietly behind the scenes preparing to take the world in a new direction? I'm going to say again, I am talking about so much more than this particular presidential election. I am talking about generations of people who have been abused, used, and silenced by a small, powerful, wealthy minority. Do we and are we ready to be and choose something different? I touched on this a little bit a few weeks ago when I talked about self-care and the role model that Simone Biles showed to the world 4 years ago when she put her own physical, mental, and spiritual health above everything else and removed herself from the competition in the middle of the Tokyo Olympics. 4 years later, she is here winning gold medals again from a place of power, strength, and centered, grounded self-love. I came across a story that a few years ago, one of her teammates was really struggling with her own training and kind of the toxic culture of the gym that she was training in. And Simone told her, come over here, be with me, train with me in my gym. And this other gymnast was ready to quit altogether. But Simone reached out to her, told her to come work with her, and step by step helped her regain her self-esteem the same way that she had done it herself. And I believe that her teammate is competing alongside her this week. This is how you hand off a torch. With compassion, with wisdom, with kindness, grace, and humility. And I also want to be clear that passing the torch and taking yourself into a new phase of life is just that. It doesn't mean that when we pass off a torch in one area of our life, that our life just stops, or it ends, or our purpose is no longer what it was. It just means that your journey continues into its own new and beautiful phase. I spent this last week at a spiritual care conference in Santa Fe, and it was really wonderful to just get away, not be in charge of anything, and literally just kind of be invisible while soaking in the wisdom and spiritual gifts of somebody else. And one of the themes for the week was, what does it mean to rest our souls? Not our personalities, not our just physical bodies, but what does it mean to rest your soul throughout all of the different phases of our life? And one of the questions that was asked was, what does it look like or mean for people who are entering into their final chapters of life to find meaning and purpose when it sometimes feels like, at least in our US culture and Western culture, that older people are deemed sometimes irrelevant or invisible? When we live in a world where the wise elder doesn't appear to be as valued in this fast-paced corporate culture that we live in. And the person who was leading the conference, we replied without hesitation that when he was younger, he was a very shy and a very overweight child. And he said that he didn't realize it at the time, but it was his quiet, non-assuming grandmother, the quiet presence of her just being there with him. He said, I realized she, in her quiet way, was protecting me throughout my entire childhood. And he did not elaborate on the details of what that meant or what his story was, but he shared that she was this quiet presence that so often was just kind of in the background, being part of the family, but doing her thing. She never said a lot. But it took until he became an adult and started doing his own true, authentic soul self-care that he was able to look back at his childhood through that adult lens and realize the power of what she was doing and the gift that she was offering him in her own way. She was doing so much more than what the people around her realized. And he believes she knew the entire time what she was doing and what her role was. And so please don't misunderstand. I am not saying that as we get older, we need to just go sit in the corner and hold space. I am not saying that at all. I am saying that as we get older and our bodies slow down or have different abilities, that we and our lives continue to hold deep meaning and purpose throughout the entire course of our physical incarnation, even when it may appear that we are slowing down. Because as our bodies begin to slow down, this is when we have enough time to allow our spirits to show up in new and beautiful ways. And I'm going to say that again. As our bodies begin to slow down, this is the gift that allows our spirits and our souls to expand, open up, and show up in new and beautiful ways that we never had time for before. It's not always overt. Sometimes the gifts and the purpose becomes a little more covert. But whether we are sharing who we are in an overt or quietly covert way, we are valued. Always so very valued. So let's look at some of the characteristics of passing a torch. You don't pass the torch and then just go away. You might pass the torch and then rest, for sure. But that doesn't mean you no longer have a stake in the game. It just means your role has changed from active participant to possibly elder wisdom keeper, in whatever capacity that means for you. So what does passing a torch look like? It's active. We know that we're doing it. We're holding something and we're actively, intentionally, consciously giving it to somebody else. It's conscious. It's intentional. It can be very inspiring, and it can even be energizing. How many times in our lives have we held on to something so tightly because we felt that that was who we are, that was our identity, we were wrapped around holding on. And when we finally let go, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and we're no longer holding on to what we think we used to be or we're supposed to be, how many times do you kind of just feel that decompression, that breath, that an opening, an expansion, that now there's room for something else in my life, and I can be energized and excited by that. Passing the torch is an acknowledgement that we can't do it all the time, all by ourselves, and nor do we need to. And so this week, as we continue to move through whatever we're moving through. There is a sense of optimism, there's a sense of energizing, but the world is still tough. There is still a lot of violence in the world. There is still a lot of oppression. There is genocide happening in numerous places. There is war. It's not all roses and candy canes. But there's also something really powerful and really beautiful by feeling like you are part of something bigger and more cosmic than just our individual lives. And I feel like that is the gift that has been given in the last 2 weeks. And like I said, it's not necessarily about the human personalities involved. It's about us collectively as a humanity coming back around again, once again, being given the opportunity to decide who and what and how we want to be in the world. And to me, that is exciting. It's fun, and it makes me want to get going. So here we go, as we all have been given the opportunity and the invitation to take up the torch. Let us sing together our closing hymn, number 346, Come Sing a Psalm with Me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace. Amen.